After 4 years of silence, I received a letter from my daughter, and my heart almost burst out of my chest. My hands shook as I held the envelope, afraid it might vanish if I blinked. I was just about to tear it open, when my wife's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Stop!" she cried. My breath caught. "What's wrong?" I asked, barely able to get the words out. She pointed at the letter, her eyes wide, her face pale. "Can't you see?" she whispered. I stared down at the handwriting, at the way my name was written, and a chill ran down my spine. Something about it wasn't right. I looked closer, and what I saw made my knees feel weak. Before I continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where in the world you are listening from. The living room felt too small, the air too heavy, as I clutched the envelope against my chest. My wife stepped closer, her gaze locked on the ink, her lips trembling like she was afraid to speak. "It doesn't look like her writing," she whispered, but I shook my head violently. "It has to be hers. Who else would send me this?" I argued, though deep inside a quiet doubt had already begun to gnaw at me. For 4 years, not a word. 4 years of empty phone calls, unanswered messages, birthdays that came and went with no sign of her. And now, on this day of all days, this letter. It had to mean something. It had to. My mind flooded with memories of her as a little girl, racing across the front yard with scraped knees and wild laughter. I could still feel the weight of her tiny arms around my neck when she used to whisper, "Daddy, don't ever let me go." How had we gotten here? How had that love twisted into silence and distance? My throat tightened as I brushed my thumb over the paper. It wasn't heavy, but to me it felt like a stone pressing down on my chest. My wife touched my arm gently, her eyes full of caution. "Are you sure you're ready for whatever's inside?" she asked. I couldn't answer. I didn't know if I was ready. I only knew that the next few minutes could change the rest of my life forever. I sat down slowly, the envelope still clenched in my trembling hand. My wife stayed close, her eyes never leaving my face. The silence between us was deafening, broken only by the faint ticking of the old wall clock in the kitchen. I turned the envelope over and over, staring at the familiar strokes of the letters, desperate to believe they belonged to my daughter. 4 years without her voice, 4 years of waiting for the phone to ring, only to hear nothing but emptiness. Every holiday, every birthday, her absence carved deeper into me. Yet now, as I held this thin piece of paper, a fragile hope stirred inside me, one I thought had long since died. "It's her," I whispered, though the words felt more like a plea than a certainty. My wife sat beside me, her hand resting gently on mine. "Maybe," she said softly, "but you need to be careful. You remember what happened last time." Her words pulled me backward, dragging me into memories I tried so hard to bury. My daughter's smile flashing in anger, the way her husband's cold eyes had looked at me like I was nothing. The slam of a door that seemed to echo for years. That was the day she walked away from me, from us, and left silence where laughter used to be. I pressed the envelope against the light streaming through the window. I could just make out the shadow of a single folded page inside. It wasn't thick enough for a long letter, but it was something real, something from her. My pulse raced as if the paper might vanish if I didn't open it right then. "Do you remember her 17th birthday?" I asked suddenly, my voice cracking. My wife smiled sadly. "The one where she begged you to let her drive the car for the first time? And you pretended to be angry but handed her the keys anyway?" I nodded, my eyes burning. She laughed the whole way down the street. God, she was so full of life. "That's the girl I see when I look at this envelope. That's the girl who wrote this." My wife's hand tightened on mine. "Or, someone wants you to believe she did." Her words sliced through the fragile bubble of hope I had built around myself. I stared down at the envelope again, the black ink glaring back at me like a challenge. Was this my daughter reaching out after all these years? Or was it something far more sinister waiting to destroy what little hope I had left? The sight of the envelope pulled me back in time, back to the day everything shattered. It was late September, the air cool but heavy with the kind of weight only arguments can bring. I remember standing outside her apartment building, my hand hovering over the buzzer. My heart pounded with determination. I had rehearsed the words I wanted to say 100 times, but when my finger pressed that button, all I felt was fear. The door clicked open, and I climbed the stairs, every step dragging like lead. When she opened the door, she looked different. My daughter, once so full of light, stood there with tired eyes and slumped shoulders. She was only 35, but stress had etched itself into her face. "Dad," she said, her voice flat, "what are you doing here?" We know. Need to talk, I told her, trying to keep my tone calm, though my chest felt like it was on fire. About your marriage. Her jaw tightened instantly. I saw the walls go up in her eyes. If this is about Liam again... It is about Liam, I cut in, unable to stop myself. It's about the gambling, the money he's bleeding from you. I saw the receipts in his car. Over $1,200 gone in one night. How many more nights like that are there? Her face paled, but before she could speak, he appeared. Liam, always too smooth, too polished. The kind of man who smiled with his lips, but never with his eyes. He slid his hand onto her shoulder as if to remind me she belonged to him now. Ralph, he said with false warmth. Good to see you. What brings you by? I glared at him. I'm talking to my daughter about the casino bills I found. Don't play games with me. I know the difference between business expenses and addiction. He smirked, but his eyes flickered with something cold. That was a client meeting, he lied easily. My daughter stepped back, closer to him. Dad, I don't need you digging through my life. I'm 35 years old. I can make my own choices. And I'll stop interfering when you stop letting this man destroy everything you've built, I snapped. He's draining you. He's ruining your credit, your future. That's enough, she shouted, her voice breaking. This is my life, not yours. If I choose to stand by my husband, that's my decision, not yours. Her words cut me deeper than any knife could. I tried to reach her, to remind her of the family we once were, but she turned her face away. Liam's grip on her shoulder tightened, and in that moment I knew I had lost her. Her words still rang in my ears, sharp and final, but I couldn't let them stand. I stepped forward, desperate, my hand trembling as I reached toward her. Don't you see what's happening, Claire? He's pulling you away from us, from your family, from the people who love you most. Her eyes flashed with anger, though behind it I saw the faint shimmer of fear. Family? She spat. You mean the family that never trusted my choices? That second-guessed every decision I made since I was old enough to breathe? I shook my head, my voice cracking. No, we questioned this because we love you, because we don't want to see you broken. But Liam slipped in front of her then, smooth as a shadow, his voice dripping with poison. Maybe it's time you gave her the space she deserves, Ralph. She's not a little girl anymore. She doesn't need you hovering, controlling, criticizing. The way he said it made my stomach churn. He was turning her against me with every word, and I could see her nodding slowly, letting his lies take root. Claire, I pleaded, my throat tight, I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to protect you. Can't you see the difference? Her arms folded across her chest, a barrier I couldn't cross. All I see is a father who can't accept that his daughter is grown. I'm choosing my husband, and if you can't respect that, then maybe you shouldn't come around anymore. The words slammed into me like a hammer. My knees weakened, my breath caught, and the room seemed to tilt. I wanted to shout, to shake her, to make her remember every birthday, every bedtime story, every Sunday morning we spent laughing over pancakes, but none of it mattered. She had already closed the door in her heart. Liam's hand squeezed her shoulder, firm and possessive. His smile widened, though it never reached his eyes. You heard her, Ralph. Time to leave. Claire, please. My voice broke. She turned her back to me, her silence louder than any scream. And then the door closed. A soft click. But it might as well have been thunder. It echoed through my chest, leaving nothing but emptiness in its wake. I stood there in the hallway, staring at that closed door until the sounds of the city swallowed me whole. And when I finally walked away, I knew I had lost her, not to distance, not to time, but to him. The memory of that slammed door still clung to me as I sat in the living room with the envelope heavy in my hands. My wife sat beside me, her eyes fixed on the paper, as though it were alive. The late afternoon sun filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows across the floor, shadows that seemed to stretch toward me like fingers. Open it, a part of me whispered. Find out what she wants. Maybe it's forgiveness. Maybe it's a second chance. But another voice, darker and colder, hissed back. Be careful. Not everything that looks like hope is real. My wife leaned closer, her brow furrowed. Something doesn't add up, she murmured. She pointed to the writing again, her finger trembling just slightly. Look here, Claire's letters always tilt to the right. Always. But these? They tilt left. You see it, don't you? I tried to shake my head, to deny it, to cling to the fragile hope in my chest. But once she said it, I couldn't unsee it. The slant was wrong. The curves were too sharp, the spaces between words too wide. My throat tightened. Maybe she was in a hurry. I argued weakly. Maybe her hand slipped. My wife's eyes, calm but steady, locked onto mine. No, handwriting is like fingerprints. You don't forget how to write your own name, not after 39 years. I stared at the envelope, my palms damp with sweat. Could it be possible? Could someone else have written this? And if so, why? The room felt suffocating. My chest rose and fell in quick, shallow breaths. I wanted to tear it open, to see the truth inside, but fear pinned me down. What if it wasn't her? What if this was just another cruel trick? She remembered, I whispered desperately, clinging to the return address printed neatly in the corner. It's her birthday today. She knew I'd be thinking of her. My wife placed a gentle hand on mine. Or someone knew you would be. Someone who understands what this date means to you. The thought chilled me to the bone. I looked at the envelope again, but now it felt heavier, darker, almost dangerous. A moment ago, it had been a lifeline. Now it looked more like bait. For 4 years I had prayed for a message, any message from my daughter, and now that one sat in my hands, I couldn't even bring myself to open it. The silence pressed down on me like a weight I couldn't shake. My wife's hand still rested on mine, steady and grounding, but inside I was unraveling. The envelope sat on the coffee table between us, no bigger than my palm, yet it felt like it could decide the rest of my life. My fingers twitched toward it, then retreated, back and forth, like a man torn between salvation and damnation. My wife studied me carefully. "You don't have to do this now," she whispered. "We can wait until tomorrow, or next week. Whatever's inside, it won't disappear." But she didn't understand. I had waited long enough. 4 years of silence was already more than I could bear. I needed answers, even if they shattered me. I picked up the envelope again, feeling the faint ridges of the handwriting beneath my thumb. I traced the letters of my name, trying to convince myself they belonged to her. My wife leaned closer, her voice urgent now. "Look again. The strokes are too light." Claire always pressed down hard when she wrote, remember? Her pens used to run dry faster than anyone else's. This looks like someone who barely touched the page. Her words dug into me, but I pushed them aside. I couldn't let doubt win. Not now. "People change," I muttered. "Maybe her style changed. Maybe she's been through things we don't know about." My wife shook her head. "Not like this. Not so much that it looks like another person entirely." I pressed my thumb under the flap, the paper soft from being held so long in my damp hands. My chest tightened, my heartbeat drumming so loud it drowned out everything else. "If I don't open it," I whispered, "I'll never know. And I can't live with not knowing any more." Her lips parted as if to protest again, but she fell silent. Instead, she squeezed my hand, her eyes full of both fear and love. She knew I was already past the point of turning back. With a sharp breath, I slid my finger beneath the seal and tore it open. The sound of ripping paper was louder than thunder in the quiet room. My wife gasped softly, clutching my arm as if bracing for impact. Inside was a single folded sheet, neat and thin. No photographs, no little trinkets, just words waiting to be read. I pulled it out with trembling hands, the paper crinkling as though it resisted being opened. My wife leaned in close, her breath shallow, both of us staring at the words that might either heal or destroy us. The paper unfolded in my hands, its creases sharp, its weight far too light for the burden it carried. My eyes scanned the first line, and my heart stopped. "Dear Dad," it began. The words blurred for a moment as tears welled in my eyes. My daughter hadn't called me Dad in years. She always wrote Daddy in her notes, even after she was grown. That one word was already wrong, but I forced myself to keep reading. "I desperately need your help," the letter continued. "I am in the hospital, and the doctors say I require emergency surgery that my insurance will not cover. They need the payment immediately, or I may not survive." My hands shook so violently the paper rattled. "Oh, God," I whispered. My wife's hand flew to her mouth, her face pale as chalk. "Keep reading," she urged, though her voice cracked. "The cost is $18,000, the letter went on. "Please, Dad, you're the only one I can turn to. The surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning. If the payment is not received, they will not operate. Time is running out. I'm begging you, transfer the money today to this account." Below the words was a long, meaningless string of numbers and letters, some sort of digital code, a payment address. I blinked at it in confusion. "What the hell is this?" I muttered. My wife leaned closer, squinting. That looks like one of those cryptocurrency wallets, not a bank account, not even a name. I read the closing lines, my chest heavy. I'm sorry it took a crisis for me to reach out after so long, but please, don't let our past keep you from saving my life. Your loving daughter, Claire. The letter slipped from my grasp and landed on the coffee table, fluttering like a dying bird. My wife was already shaking her head. No, she said firmly. This isn't her. She would never write this, not like this. My voice broke. But what if it is? What if she's really in danger and this is my only chance to save her? Think, Ralph, she snapped, her fear sharpening into anger. Claire works in finance. If she needed money, she would call us, or at the very least use a normal account, not this nonsense. I rubbed my temples, my mind spinning. Everything about the letter felt wrong, the wording too formal, the lack of personal detail, the strange payment request. And yet, it carried her name. It carried the handwriting that almost looked like hers. Hope and dread clashed inside me, tearing me apart. If this was real, my daughter's life hung in the balance. If it wasn't, then someone had just played the cruelest trick imaginable on a desperate father. The letter lay between us like a snake, coiled and poisonous. I stared at the words, reading them again and again, hoping that on the third or fourth try they might change, might become something warmer, something real, but every line stayed the same, cold and formal. My wife shook her head, her voice steady now. This isn't Claire. I can feel it. I tried to argue, though my voice cracked under the strain. But she signed it. She wrote her name. She reached out to me. No, my wife said firmly. Look at it. Just look. She pointed to the closing. Your loving daughter, Claire. She's never signed a letter like that in her life. She used to doodle hearts or write love always or some silly nickname. Never this stiff, never this formal. It reads like a stranger trying to sound like her. Her words cut me deeper than the letter itself, because she was right. I thought back to the last note my daughter had written me before we fell apart. It had been messy, full of crossed-out words, rushed handwriting, but it was alive. It sounded like her. This was lifeless. And here, my wife continued, tapping the page, I'm in the hospital. Where's the name of the hospital? Where's the doctor's name, the room number? Claire's detail-oriented. If she really wanted our help, she'd give us everything. Instead, it's vague, as if the writer didn't know what details to add. I swallowed hard, staring at the string of numbers at the bottom. And this, I muttered, this isn't her. She doesn't talk about cryptocurrency. She barely tolerates me using online banking. If she needed money, she'd tell me to come down there myself, or to wire it directly to her account. My wife nodded, her eyes narrowing. Exactly. Whoever wrote this knows just enough to sound convincing, but not enough to sound like her. They're imitating her, pretending. The realization hit me like a blow. I slumped back in my chair, my heart pounding with a new kind of dread. Then who did this? I whispered. Who would go to all this trouble just to trick us? The room was heavy with silence again, but this time it wasn't hope that filled it. It was suspicion. Dark, gnawing suspicion. My wife laid her hand over mine. We'll find out. But Ralph, you need to face it. This letter didn't come from our daughter. I couldn't sit still any longer. The letter burned in my mind, each word replaying with cruel precision. My wife's voice echoed too. This isn't her, but I couldn't just take her word for it. I needed to hear my daughter's voice, to know she was safe. I snatched up the phone from the counter, my fingers trembling as I punched in the number I had dialed 1,000 times before. The ring felt endless. Once, twice, 3 times. Then her voicemail. Her voice, distant and professional now, filled my ear. It sounded nothing like the warm girl who used to call me on Sunday evenings, just to talk about nothing at all. Claire, it's Dad, I said quickly, my throat tight. Call me back as soon as you get this. Please, it's important. I hung up, stared at the silent phone, then dialed again, and again. Each time, the same result. Ring after ring, then the mechanical voice telling me to leave a message. I left another, my voice breaking. Sweetheart, if you're okay, just call me. I don't care what time, I just need to know you're safe. My wife stood in the doorway, watching me pace across the kitchen floor. Her face was pale, her eyes full of worry. She's not going to answer, she said softly. I shook my head. She has to. She can't ignore this. But the truth gnawed at me. For years she had ignored my calls, my letters, my attempts to reach out. Why would this time be any different? Still, I couldn't stop. On the third message, my desperation spilled over. "Claire, someone sent us a letter. They're pretending to be you. They said you're in the hospital and need money. If this isn't you, I need to hear it from you. Please, sweetheart, don't let me sit here wondering if you're alive." I slammed the receiver down, harder than I meant to, my hand shaking. My wife moved closer, her voice calm but edged with fear. "Maybe she's at work, or maybe—" She stopped, her lips pressing into a thin line. "Maybe what?" I demanded. Her eyes flicked toward the letter still lying on the table. Maybe he won't let her answer. The thought hit me like a punch to the gut. Liam, the man who had stood between us from the beginning, the man who tigged his grip every time I tried to reach her. What if he screened her calls? What if he decided which voices she was allowed to hear? The idea made my blood boil. I looked at the phone, then back at the letter, the string of numbers at the bottom mocking me. Someone was using her name. Someone was playing with our pain, and the silence on the other end of the line was the worst cruelty of all. I couldn't take it anymore. Sitting in that kitchen, staring at a dead phone line and a forged letter, I felt like I was suffocating. My wife tried to calm me, her voice steady, but I could see the worry in her eyes. She knew what I was thinking before I even said it. "You're not going over there," she warned, her hand tightening around mine. "I have to," I said, my voice rough. "If she won't answer the phone, then I'll go to her door. She deserves to know someone is pretending to be her, and if she is in trouble, if that letter's even half true, then waiting around could cost her life." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't argue further. She only whispered, "Be careful. Don't let your heart drag you into another fight with him." But I was already pulling my coat from the rack, the letter folded in my pocket like evidence. The weight of it pressed against me as I grabbed the car keys. My wife's last words followed me out the door. "Please, Ralph, don't let him hurt you again." The engine roared to life, and I pulled out of the driveway, the quiet streets of our town sliding past in a blur. As I merged onto the highway, my thoughts churned. Memories collided with the present. The last time I drove this same route, my chest full of determination, only to return with my heart in pieces. The city skyline rose in the distance, gray against the late afternoon sky. Every mile closer brought back a flood of memories. Claire's laughter in the back seat when she was a child, singing along to songs on the radio, the time she begged me to stop for ice cream on the way home from school, the last drive we took together before Liam entered her life, and everything changed. I gripped the wheel tighter, the leather biting into my palms. This time would be different, I told myself. I wasn't going there to argue about her choices, or to drag her away from him. I was going there to warn her, to protect her, even if she didn't want me to. But underneath that resolve was a gnawing fear. What if she didn't believe me? What if she thought I had invented the letter just to get her attention? What if this only pushed her further away? The highway narrowed into crowded city streets. Traffic slowed, giving me too much time to think, too much time to imagine every possible outcome. Hope and dread battled inside me with every turn of the wheel. The streets grew quieter as I turned into her neighborhood. The houses here were tall and pristine, lined with trimmed hedges and expensive cars gleaming in the driveways. It was the kind of place I had never belonged, not even when my daughter lived here. Every brick, every window, screamed of the life she had built without me. I parked 2 blocks away, slipping quarters into the meter with shaking hands. The walk gave me time to breathe, but not to calm down. My chest was tight, my palms damp. Each step felt heavier, as though the ground itself resisted me. Her townhouse appeared ahead, red brick with black shutters, flowers carefully arranged in a small garden out front. Lights glowed in the windows. Someone was home. My heart lurched at the sight. I stopped at the bottom of the steps, staring at the burgundy door with its polished brass knocker. 3 years since I had last stood here. 3 years since she had chosen him over me. I clenched the folded letter in my pocket until the paper crumpled. Then I forced myself up the steps and pressed the doorbell. The chime echoed inside, a tune too elegant for a home that felt so cold to me. Footsteps followed, quick and familiar. My stomach twisted. Then the peephole darkened, a pause, and the sound of locks turning. The door opened. She stood there, my daughter. Older now, her hair shorter, her style more polished, but still unmistakably her. She wore a simple dress that probably cost more than I made in a week. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Dad?" The words slipped out flat, almost emotionless, as if she wasn't sure whether to be surprised or angry. I swallowed hard, my throat aching. "Hello, Claire." We stared at each other, years of silence hanging between us like a wall of glass. She looked healthy, Thank God she looked healthy, but distant, like she belonged to another world now. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice firm, guarded. I took a shaky breath and reached into my jacket pocket. "I need to ask you something important." I pulled out the envelope and held it out for her to see. "Did you write this?" Her eyes flicked down, scanning the handwriting. Confusion crossed her face, then alarm. She took the paper, unfolded it, and read quickly. When she looked up again, her brow was furrowed, her lips pressed tight. "I didn't write this," she said. Her voice was sharp, almost offended. "Where did you get it?" Her words cut through me like a blade. "I didn't write this." My breath caught. For a moment I almost believed her expression, the way her brows drew together in confusion, the sharpness in her voice. But the letter was real. It had arrived in my mailbox with her name, her handwriting, her birthday stamped like a cruel reminder. "It came this morning," I told her, my voice tight. "On your birthday, Claire. After 4 years of silence. I thought it was you finally reaching out. But when I read it..." I stopped, shaking my head. "Did someone else put your name on this?" She glanced down again, her lips pressed in a thin line. "This isn't mine. I never wrote this. Dad, I haven't written to you in years." The way she said it stung, as though she was reminding me on purpose. "Then who did?" I demanded, my throat raw. "Who would pretend to be you? Who would ask for money like this?" Behind her, another set of footsteps echoed down the hall. And then he appeared. Liam, taller than I remembered, dressed in casual clothes that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. His expression was perfectly arranged, concerned but calm, but his eyes gave him away, cold, calculating, watchful. "Naomi, who is it?" he asked smoothly, though it was clear he already knew. "My father," she answered, folding the letter in her hands. "He says someone's been writing fake letters pretending to be me." Liam's eyes flicked to me, then to the paper, then back. He moved closer, his arm brushing hers as if to remind her where she stood. "That sounds like a scam," he said evenly. "People do that all the time. You should report it to the police, Ralph." The way he said my name made my stomach twist. Too familiar, too dismissive. "Report it?" I snapped. "Maybe I will, but it's strange, isn't it? $18,000. That's not a random number. That's the kind of money a man could lose in a bad week at a casino." For the briefest second his jaw tightened. Just a flicker, but I saw it. Years of engineering work had trained me to notice when something didn't fit. "I wouldn't know anything about that," he replied quickly, too quickly, his smile slipping back into place. "Wouldn't you?" I asked, my voice sharp. "Dad, that's enough," Claire said, stepping closer to him, her eyes flashing with anger. "You can't come here and throw accusations like that. I told you, I didn't write that letter. I don't know who did, and I don't want to talk about it anymore." Her words landed like stones in my chest. She was choosing again, siding with him, and I stood in her doorway holding proof of something rotten but unable to make her see it. Her words stung, but what followed shattered me even more. Claire's face hardened, her eyes narrowing with suspicion as she clutched the folded letter in her hands. "How do I even know this came in the mail?" she demanded. "How do I know you didn't make this up yourself?" The accusation hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled back a step, my chest tightening. "What?" I whispered, barely able to breathe. "You've been trying to contact me for years," she went on, her voice sharp and shaking. "The calls, the texts, the surprise visits. Maybe this was just another attempt to drag me back into your life. Maybe you wrote this yourself because you knew it would get me to open the door." "Claire, no," I said, my voice breaking. "Why would I do that? Why would I put words like this on paper? Pretend you're dying? Pretend you need money? That's not me. That's not your father." But she was already pulling away, her eyes glassy, her mouth pressed into a thin line of distrust. Behind her, Liam rested his hand on her shoulder, steady, possessive. His voice slid in like oil. "Naomi, you don't have to listen to this. If he brought you some scam letter, let him take it to the police. This doesn't concern you." I looked at him then, really looked. His expression was too composed, too controlled, as though he'd been waiting for this moment, steering it exactly where he wanted. But Claire didn't see it. She only saw me, the desperate father at her doorstep, begging for a sliver of trust. "Please," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I didn't make this up. Someone is using your name, your handwriting, your birthday. They knew about us, Claire. They knew about our silence." She shook her head, tears burning in her eyes. "I can't do this. Not again. I don't know who wrote this, Dad, but it wasn't me. And if you can't accept that, then maybe you should stop coming here altogether." Her words Okay, something inside me. I wanted to fight, to stay, to shout the truth until she believed me, but the way she looked at me, like I was a stranger at her door, stole the strength from my bones. The door began to close, slow but firm, her face disappearing behind the frame. "Don't come back without calling first," she said. Then the lock clicked, final and cold, sealing me out once more. I stood on the steps, the city sounds buzzing faintly in the distance, the letter like a stone in my pocket. And I knew I had lost her all over again. The drive back felt endless. City lights blurred through the windshield, but I barely saw them. My mind replayed every second of that encounter. Her accusing eyes, her voice sharp with distrust, the way she stood beside him like I was the enemy. Each memory cut deeper than the last. By the time I pulled into our driveway, my chest felt hollow, as if I had left my heart somewhere on her doorstep. My wife was waiting at the window, her face pale in the lamplight. When I stepped inside, she didn't need to ask what had happened. She read the defeat in my shoulders, the pain in my eyes. "She didn't believe you," she whispered. I shook my head, dropping heavily into a chair. The folded letter was still in my pocket, but now it felt like poison. "Worse," I rasped. "She thinks I made it up. She thinks I forged it just to see her." My wife pressed her lips together, her hand covering her mouth in disbelief. "Oh, Ralph." She sat beside me, her hand slipping into mine. For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator. Finally, she said what had been circling both our minds. "Who else would do this? Who else even knows enough about us to pull something like this off? They knew her birthday. They knew about the silence. They knew exactly how to make you believe it was her." I rubbed my forehead, my voice low. "It wasn't random. This wasn't some scammer picking an address out of a phone book. Whoever did this targeted us. They studied her handwriting. They knew I'd cling to the hope." Her gaze hardened, her voice steady. "Then it's someone close. Someone who benefits from keeping you and Claire apart. Someone who doesn't want reconciliation." The name formed on my lips before I could stop it. "Liam?" She nodded slowly. "Who else? He's always been the wedge between you. He's always been too smooth, too controlling. And you said yourself the amount in the letter. It sounded more like gambling debt than a medical bill." The thought made my stomach churn. I pictured his face at the door, too calm, too quick with answers, the flicker in his eyes when I mentioned casinos. It all fit together like pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to solve. "If it's him," I whispered, "then he didn't just lie to her. He tried to bleed us dry. He used our daughter's name to do it." My wife's hand tightened around mine. "Then we wait. We watch. If he's desperate enough to forge her handwriting once, he'll slip again. Men like him always do." I leaned back in the chair, exhaustion pulling me down. But beneath the fatigue, something else stirred, determination. If Liam thought he could manipulate my family forever, he was about to learn he'd picked the wrong man to deceive. 3 days passed like a lifetime. My wife and I moved through the house in silence, speaking only in fragments, both of us haunted by that letter and the sound of Claire's voice accusing me. I replayed it over and over in my head, the disbelief in her eyes, the way Liam hovered just behind her, always close, always watching. Every time I thought about it, the anger burned hotter. On the third evening, just as the sky turned gray with rain, the doorbell rang. I expected a neighbor, maybe a delivery. Instead, when I opened the door, there she was, my daughter, standing on the porch in the drizzle, her hair damp, her clothes wrinkled, a manila folder clutched to her chest like a shield. "Claire," I breathed, my voice barely more than a whisper. Her eyes were red, her cheeks streaked with tears she hadn't bothered to wipe away. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling, "I need to talk to you." For a moment I just stared, afraid that if I blinked she might vanish. Then I stepped aside, my throat too tight to speak. She walked in quickly, clutching the folder as though it contained her last breath. My wife appeared from the kitchen, her hands still damp from the sink. One look at our daughter's face and she hurried forward. "Oh, sweetheart, what's happened?" Claire shook her head, opening the folder with shaking fingers. She spread the papers out across the coffee table. Even from a distance I could see the rows of handwriting, repeated again and again. My stomach dropped. "Practice sheets," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I found them in Liam's desk, hidden under files he labeled as business expenses. Look." I leaned closer, my heart pounding. The pages were filled with her name, our address, fragments of sentences, some sloppy, some neat, all attempts to mimic her handwriting. My wife covered her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. "He did it," Claire said, her tears spilling over now. "He forged it all. The letter, the handwriting, everything. He's been practicing for months, and when I confronted him, he admitted it. He has debts, Dad, bad ones. He thought he could get the money from you before you ever knew the truth." Her words blurred as the rage roared in my ears. The confirmation was there in black and white, proof that I hadn't imagined it, proof that I hadn't lost my mind. Liam had taken my daughter from me, poisoned her against me, and then tried to use my love to line his own pockets. I stared at the practice sheets spread across the table, my hands trembling as I picked one up. Each crooked letter, each clumsy attempt to mimic my daughter's handwriting, was a knife to the chest. He had studied her like she was nothing more than a puzzle to solve, a tool to exploit. My throat tightened as I set the page back down. Claire sank into the couch, her face buried in her hands. "Dad, I'm so sorry," she whispered through her sobs. "You tried to warn me about him years ago. You told me he was no good, and I didn't listen. I shut you out. I chose him over you. And now—" Her voice broke. "Now I see what he really is." I sat beside her, fighting the urge to reach out, afraid she might pull away again. "Sweetheart," I said, softly. "He tricked you. Manipulators like him. They know how to twist love into chains. None of this is your fault." She shook her head violently. "No, it is. I let him convince me that you were trying to control me, that you wanted to ruin my marriage. He said you were jealous, that you couldn't let go, and I believed him. I thought I was proving my independence by siding with him, but all I was doing was walking into a trap." Tears streamed down her cheeks. My wife moved closer, wrapping her arms around our daughter the way she used to when Claire was a child. "The important thing," she said gently, "is that you see the truth now." Claire wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, her expression hardening into something I hadn't seen in years, resolve. "I'm filing for divorce," she said firmly. "Tomorrow. I can't stay married to a man who would steal from my own parents by pretending to be me. I won't let him keep destroying me." Her words hit me like a wave, a mixture of pride and heartbreak. Pride because she had finally seen through him. Heartbreak because of the years we had lost while she was trapped under his shadow. "Claire," I whispered, my voice raw, "I never stopped loving you. Not for 1 second. All I wanted was for you to be safe, to be happy. If this is the step you need to take, we'll be here. Every day, every night. We'll walk with you through it." She nodded, her hands gripping mine tightly. "Can you forgive me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "For shutting you out? For not believing you?" I didn't trust my voice, so I just pulled her into my arms. She clung to me like the little girl who used to run into my room during thunderstorms, and for the first time in years, I felt my family start to heal. The house felt different with Claire in it again. For years, her absence had been a wound we tiptoed around. An empty chair at every meal. A silence that hung heavy no matter how much noise the world made outside. But now she sat at our table, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her eyes still red, but clearer than I had seen them in years. On the counter lay the forged letter, the same one that had nearly broken me when I thought it was real. I stared at it, the words etched into my mind forever. "This thing has poisoned us enough," I said quietly. "It doesn't deserve to exist anymore." Claire looked at me, then at the letter. Slowly, she nodded. "Burn it." My wife fetched a box of matches from the drawer while I carried the letter to the sink. The three of us crowded together, our shoulders nearly touching. My hand shook only slightly as I struck the match, its flame flickering to life. For a moment, I hesitated, staring at the piece of paper that had dangled hope in front of me just to rip it away. Then I touched the flame to the corner. The letter caught quickly, curling black, the fire racing across the page until the lies turned to ash. Smoke drifted upward and disappeared into the air, and with it, a part of the weight on my chest lifted. Claire whispered, "Good riddance." We stood in silence for a moment, all three of us staring into the sink as the last ember died out. My wife slipped her arm around Claire's shoulders. "He doesn't get to control you anymore," she said firmly. "Or us." Claire's lips trembled into a weak smile. "He won't. I promise." Afterward, my wife disappeared into the living room and returned with a thick photo album, one we hadn't dared open in years. She set it on the table and flipped it open. Pictures spilled across the pages. Birthday parties, vacations, Christmas mornings. Claire at 8 years old, grinning wide at a baseball game with mustard on her shirt. Claire at 16, rolling her eyes but smiling as I held up a crooked birthday cake. She laughed softly, the sound fragile but real. "I can't believe I forgot this," she whispered, touching a picture of herself as a child on my shoulders at the beach. "I forgot who I was before him." I leaned across the table and squeezed her hand. "You didn't forget. He tried to make you forget, but you're still you, and you're still ours." For the first time in years, I felt the bond knitting back together, fragile but strong, like threads pulling tight after being torn. We had lost so much time, but now we had a chance to rebuild. That night, after dinner, we sat together in the living room like a family again. The storm outside had softened into a steady rain, tapping gently against the windows. Claire sat between us on the couch, her head resting against her mother's shoulder, her hand still clutching mine. For years I had imagined this moment, reunion, forgiveness, the chance to start over, and now it was here, real and warm, and I didn't want to let go. "I can't believe I let him keep me from you for so long," Claire whispered. "He always had an excuse. He'd say you were trying to control me, or that talking to you would only bring stress, and I believed him. Every lie he told, I let it sink in." "Don't blame yourself," I said gently. "People like him are experts at twisting love into chains. But chains can be broken. Tonight proves that." She lifted her head, her eyes bright with tears. But this time, they weren't only sad. "I'll never let it happen again. No more silence. No more years without each other. From now on, we stay in touch, no matter what." My wife kissed the top of her head. "That's all we've ever wanted." We talked late into the night, flipping through photo albums, remembering things we thought we'd lost forever. It was as if the years of distance melted away, leaving only the bond we had always shared beneath the pain. When Claire finally went upstairs to rest in her old room, I lingered in the doorway, watching her unpack a few belongings. She looked younger somehow, lighter, freed from the weight of a marriage built on lies. She turned and caught me staring. "Thank you for not giving up on me," she said softly. I swallowed hard, my throat thick. "Never. Family doesn't give up. That is what makes it family." Outside, the rain continued falling, washing the streets clean. Inside, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself in years: hope. Not just the desperate, fragile kind that clings to scraps, but real hope, the kind that builds a future. We had been broken, but we weren't destroyed. We had been silenced, but we weren't lost. Tonight, I had my daughter back, and together we would face whatever came next. And if you've stayed with me through this story, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what this story meant to you, and never forget, family may bend, but if we fight for it, it never truly breaks.